What's going on, everybody? Cody Pasby from Mojobreak Media with you. Baseball is back. Have you heard? If you haven't, don't worry. We're here to give you a crash course about which baseball players you should be following in the hobby in 2022. It is Mojobreak's Hobby Top 10. So how did we come up with this top 10 list? Well, we're only going to focus on players who had Major League experience going into the 2022 season. That means no Bobby Witt Jr., Spencer Torkelson, etc. If you want to see how we feel about those guys, check out our video about our top 10 prospects going into the 2022 season. But we're going to focus both on player performance on the field, how those players performed in the hobby, plus giving a little bump to some rookies who got some Major League experience last year. Hint, hint. I think you know who we're talking about. But before we get into our top 10 list, let's focus on a few hobby sleepers, guys who are performing on the field but don't get the love in the sports card world. Our first sleeper pick, Houston Astros outfielder Kyle Tucker. The guy had an incredible year last year in the batter's box. One of the better offensive players in all of baseball just a year ago. I don't know why his stuff is so undervalued compared to what other guys of his talent level, of his age, are doing. It really doesn't make any sense to me, other than he wears a Houston Astros uniform. I think it's worth repeating. The guy didn't play on the 2017 Houston Astros. He wasn't a part of that whole debacle. He was still in the minor leagues, and yet he is unfairly being kind of put down in the hobby because of it. I think that this is maybe something that corrects itself in the next couple of years, and now is the time to get in on his cards. His stuff, compared, like I said, to guys of his talent level, is way, way low. Kyle Tucker, power, speed combination. Can't go wrong with that when you're collecting cards. His stuff is real affordable compared to what his talent level is. Next up, Rafael Devers, Boston Red Sox third baseman. Another guy, very young, very talented. I think a guy that maybe his value took a hit in the baseball card world because he really didn't get out of the gates very well. He kind of stumbled out of the gates, kind of struggled in his first couple of years, and I think the hype died down considerably on him. But the last couple of years, he has been an excellent offensive player. Last year was one of the best third basemen in all of baseball, and he plays for a premium team, Boston Red Sox, huge market, huge fan base. He's playing at a premium position, third base. That is a star position, and he's playing like a star. I think his stuff is, again, still pretty affordable compared to the type of caliber of player he is and how young he is. Just before we taped this, he hit an opening day home run against the New York Yankees, against Garrett Cole. This guy is destined for a breakout season, maybe gets lost in the shuffle in an AL East that features now Wander Franco and Vladimir Guerrero Jr., but don't sleep on Rafael Devers. Don't sleep on a lot of these Red Sox. Xander Bogaerts as well. There's a lot of talented players on that team, a team that I think after a rough season a couple of years ago, people kind of forgot about them for a while. Thought, well, the Red Sox aren't going to be relevant for a little bit, but they are. They're always going to be relevant because they're Boston. They're going to spend. And Rafael Devers, a very talented young player that I think is worthy of adding to your personal collection at the right price. And lastly, 2021 Topps rookies. Almost all of them. Seriously. This is a set that I think people were pretty disappointed by last year, and rightfully so. Nobody really broke out. Ryan Mountcastle might have been the biggest star, the biggest performer out of that 2021 class of rookies, and I think his stuff is still worthy of adding to your collection. I think he's undervalued, especially for a team that is on the rise like the Baltimore Orioles. Joe Adell is in the starting lineup for the Los Angeles Angels after a fantastic spring. He looked a lot more confident. No, that opening day didn't look that great, but hey, you could be watching this and he could have already hit 3 home runs in his second game of the season. I still believe in the guy. Alec Boehm, he's still getting another chance with Philadelphia in a deep, deep lineup. Dylan Carlson for the Cardinals leading off in another deep lineup. A guy that I think has a ton of talent, can play all the positions in the outfield, is going to be given lots of chances to succeed on that team. And Joey Bart for the San Francisco Giants is going to be the opening day catcher. Looked great this spring. Big power potential behind the plate. I know catchers are a little tougher, but Joey Bart, as well as Keibert Ruiz, who is just looking fantastic for the Washington Nationals. Half a season last year, looked like he was the real deal. A really patient approach at the plate. Very rare for a young player. All those guys, I think, could succeed. Suddenly, that 2021 class could look maybe similar to 2019. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Yes, that's Vlad and Fernando Tatis and the aforementioned Kyle Tucker, but I think there's a lot of potential for a lot of these guys to pop this year. Don't sleep on those guys. I know it was a tough year last year, but patience is a virtue when it comes to baseball card collecting. All right, now that you're adding some Kyle Tucker and Rafael Devers cards to your personal collection, let's get into the top 10 in the hobby. At number 10, Mookie Betts of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Yes, a down year last year, but if a player's down year looks anything like what Mookie Betts did a year ago, give me that any day of the week. Also, 2020 was a weird year. He performed well in 2020, but he hasn't really gotten his footing with the Los Angeles Dodgers after two obviously weird seasons interrupted by obviously the pandemic and then injuries. This is a year where he can focus, and the spotlight's going to be taken off of him a little bit, obviously, with the Freddie Freeman move. Mookie Betts, when he is performing at his peak, is one of the top 2 or 3 players in all of baseball, at least position players. But I think Mookie Betts is a guy that is definitely worthy of investing in, and a guy that I think maybe at the 10 spot, it was kind of a wild card spot here, to sort of pick and choose who I want, and I'm going with Mookie Betts because I think and believe in this guy that in a lineup that's going to be deeper, this could be a guy who takes off and suddenly we remember why he is such an elite talent. And I think if you get in now and buy some of his cards at as low a price as I think as they're going to be, you should feel pretty happy by season's end that you did invest in Mookie. Number 9, I got Luis Robert, Chicago White Sox. He was in our top 10 last year, was maybe the face of baseball card collecting during 2020, the year that everything went nuts in this hobby, and Luis Robert was right in the middle of it. Kind of a make or break year. For baseball collecting, there's so much invested in this guy that he needs to have a big breakout year in 2022. Well, rest assured, I think that's going to happen. This guy was so good in the second half last year. Take a look at the stats. A phenomenal second half for Luis Robert. This is the time. I think Lou Bob is ready. I think he is a legit MVP contender. He's my pick for the most valuable player. Right team, right time. The guy is performing when he is on and he is healthy. An incredible defender, well-rounded player. There's all these reasons we have to love this guy. He's just got to be healthy and put it together. And when he was healthy last year, we saw that potential for Luis Robert. Why everybody was so high on this guy. I think it's only a matter of time. Luis Robert, 2022 breakout season. Book it. Number 8, the NL MVP, Philadelphia Phillies, Bryce Harper. A guy that has just had a roller coaster ride for both fan appreciation and hobby value. I think we have finally settled into a spot where we pretty much a consensus can accept that this guy is the real deal. He is a fantastic once-in-a-generation type of talent that we all thought he might be when he first came up with the Washington Nationals, gracing the cover of Sports Illustrated as a teenager. I think he settled into a spot, like I said, where I think most of us appreciate what we're seeing and where he ranks among players of today. But still, this is a guy I think that's a future Hall of Famer. Feels like kind of a blue chip investment if you're going to make a big purchase of one of his cards going into 2022, where he's already won his second MVP award, just the 19th player in MLB history to do so. Bryce Harper, I think he's going to be a Hall of Famer when it's all said and done. I don't really think that's a controversial statement anymore. He's not overrated or he's not underrated. I think everybody has properly rated him as one of the best players in baseball because that's what he is. And this could be a year also where he has a big come up as well because of that stacked lineup in Philadelphia. At some point, they've spent so much money there. It's got to happen, right? It's got to happen. If you feel like maybe the prices are pretty high, well, look at some other guys that I think are all-time legend guys. Albert Pujols, Miguel Cabrera. Yes, they don't have maybe the ceiling of some of these top rookie guys that are selling like hotcakes right now. But Bryce Harper, I think, is going to settle into a spot like that down the road where we finally realize, especially in those last couple of years, where we realize we have been watching something special. We've been watching a Hall of Famer, and there will be that appreciation post-career or near the end of his career career in the hobby and clearly on the field as well. Bryce Harper, he's one of the best, man. Whether you love him or hate him, he's one of the best in baseball. In the 7 and the 6 spot, we've got Fernando Tatis Jr. and Ronald Acuna Jr. I want to talk about these guys in tandem because they both are sort of entering the season with similar uncertainty. Acuna coming off of an injury last year, pretty devastating injury after having such a good start to the 2021 season. I think even after it was all said and done for Acuna, he was still top 5 in wins above replacement with the Atlanta Braves. A World Series winning team. They won it without him, sure, but he was still one of their best players when it was all said and done at the end of the year. Devastating injury. He's going to be out for at least the first month of the season. Should be back pretty soon. I think he's raring to go, though. I think he's ready for his reintroduction. We saw it this week with some interesting comments about his former teammate, Freddie Freeman. Seems like the two have already hashed things out. I think there's maybe a much ado about nothing about what Ronald Acuna said, but I think there's also a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. I think he has something to prove. I can do this without Freddie. There's a reason the Braves said bye-bye to Freddie Freeman and hello to Ronald Acuna Jr., and the Ronald Acuna Jr. era is in full swing. The guy is an incredible talent, a well-rounded talent, probably the safest bet to be a 40 home run, 40 stolen base guy in all of baseball. I don't think anybody else really has that potential except him. His prices also didn't go down that much after the injury. So Ronald Acuna Jr. still going strong. People still going hard for him in the hobby. As for Fernando Tatis Jr., man, it's weird to even say this, but buyer beware. Yes, Fernando is an incredible talent. Last year missed, over 30 games and still led the National League in home runs, primarily as a shortstop. That doesn't happen, period. That doesn't happen when you are as young as Fernando Tatis Jr. is. Phenomenal talent, cannot be understated. He's got the swag, he's got the look, he's got that face of baseball vibe to him. Just gotta get off the motorcycle, Fernando. That's all we're asking, man. A lot of money's invested in this guy for the Padres. A lot of money's invested in this guy in the hobby. I think that there's reason to believe that, yes, he's going to mature. He's still so young. There's still a lot of growth here. I think he can mature and put that aside. But we've also seen other cases where guys just can't get out of their own way. I point to my favorite team, the Giants. Madison Bumgarner couldn't get the guy off a motorbike, couldn't get the guy out of a rodeo. He just loves the thrills. It's going to happen. People want to do stuff outside of baseball, outside of your work. I get it. You got hobbies. Everyone needs a hobby, right? You need the hobby. And when it comes to the hobby, until Fernando can show that maybe that stuff needs to be put aside and you need to focus on baseball, there are some red flags going forward considering his price point in the hobby. Still believe in the guy's talent, second to none, but let's put those motorcycles in the garage. At number 5, had to put him here in the middle of our list. It's Wander Franco, Tampa Bay Rays rookie superstar. He is going to be in a rookie in all of the big flagship sets going forward here. He's the guy to chase, at least for the time being, until the aforementioned Bobby Witts and Torkelsons and Adley Rushmans get into these sets. It's going to be Wander time for a while for baseball collectors, and there's no sign of fatigue at the moment. The best thing about Wander Franco cards is that he's finally going to be playing a full season. The worst thing about that is he's finally going to be playing a full season. It could work both ways. We've seen this. If you've been collecting baseball cards long enough, you know that a lot of times that value is really just all about the hype. And the hype was absolutely deafening for Wander Franco. But he also lived up to it. He also was incredible last year. That on-base streak, phenomenal. The guy is a talent. But what's going to happen when he has that first 10-game streak where he bats like 180? It's going to happen. It happens to the best players. That, I think, is when we're going to see the true value, where his cards land is after that streak, when he then maybe comes back, has a nice season. That's, I think, where you're going to see things settle out. Like, things are crazy right now, but that moment he has that slump and then comes back up, I think is where you're going to find that happy valley of where his value is in the hobby. Is his value going to be at the high end with Trout and with Juan Soto? Or is it going to be in the middle high end, if you will, with some of the guys we've already mentioned? I think the truth is probably maybe in the middle high end. He's playing in Tampa Bay. It's not LA. It's not Boston. It's not New York. It's not a flashy big market. The good thing is he's probably staying there for a long, long time after that huge extension this season, so that bodes well for collectors who like to have that card from the team that they started with. Still, I think Wander is going to be a phenomenal talent. I don't think there's any denying that. There are few prospects who come up who look this good, this ready, this fast, but things are going to settle, and that's fine. That's what happens. Prospects play, and things then kind of settle out when you figure out who they are, what they are, and suddenly the what-ifs become what is. And Wander is an incredibly good player. Is he Mike Trout? Is he Juan Soto? Remains to be seen. Think he's going to be a great talent, an all-star talent for many, many years to come. But obviously right now, not necessarily the best time to buy. But of course, if you're looking to get boxes or get breaks and get that Wander card, I think you're still going to be very, very happy going forward for his future. At number 4, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. of the Blue Jays. If you're looking for a positive comparison, if you're maybe a White Sox fan or a Luis Robert collector, about the potential of what a post-hype breakout can do, look no further than what happened last year with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Obviously, there's a name recognition there. Everybody was on this guy, whether you were a collector or a baseball fan or even just a casual fan. You hear Vladimir Guerrero, you think of that arm in right field, the crazy stance. The guy never saw a pitch he didn't like, and he could hit that pitch. I love Vlad Guerrero, and so you hear Junior added to that, the hype just goes through the roof. And for the first couple of years, things didn't really pan out. Last year, though, I think it's safe to say things went pretty well. The Blue Jays just missed the playoffs, but Vladimir Guerrero finished second in MVP voting. He's still under 25, and his cards took a definite spike upward. Things have settled again going into the season, but it's only going to take another year like last year, which I don't really see why there isn't any reason he can do what he did a year ago, especially in a lineup that continues to improve around him, pitching rotation that looks stacked, a team that I think is a definite World Series contender. They're my pick for the World Series this year. I really like what I've seen from Toronto. If these things can happen, a World Series appearance for the Blue Jays, an MVP season for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., it sounds a little wild, but this really isn't out of the realm of possibility considering the team that Toronto has constructed and the type of talent Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has been expected to be. Only things can go up at this point for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Again, his price point is really high, but if you got in on him at the ground floor, I know I did going into the 2021 season, you should feel pretty good about that investment. Number 3 is Juan Soto, a guy that I genuinely believe can be the best player in all of baseball in the next year. The only things going against him is that he plays for a team that's probably not going to be very good. Now, things can change. The Nationals could hit the fast forward button on that rebuild. There's a lot of really promising young prospects. I've already mentioned Keibert Ruiz, Josiah Gray, but you have to wonder, if it doesn't happen, how soon does Juan Soto want to take off for a bigger market? They offered him a huge deal this offseason, and he rebuffed them. $350 million. You don't just say no to $350 million unless you're real confident you can do better than that. And yes, he is so good that he probably could do better than that on the open market. It is going to be a free agent frenzy if and when he does hit the free agent market. As for his value in the hobby, I know it is astronomical, and maybe that is not something you want an investment. I get it. It may be at a point now where his stuff is so expensive that it's prohibitive to most collectors to get in on his stuff, but may not even hurt to still get in on maybe some of his lower end stuff. I kind of still feel that way. I think he's that good. I think he's got a potential to be one of the best offensive players of his generation. Again, the only thing for his value and for his career is, where is he going to go? Is it going to be with the Nationals? Are they going to be able to build a contender around him again fast enough for him to want to stay? Or Does he end up going to a bigger market? Maybe that's good for his overall value if you're collecting him. Whatever way you cut it, he is an incredible talent who is deserving of his place among baseball card collectors as one of the elite players on the field and in the hobby. So young, so talented, so much room to grow. Man, there are too many reasons why I like Juan Soto and his future in the game of baseball. And number 2, and this might be a little controversial, is Shohei Ohtani. I don't have him at number 1. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm just the old man who can't get past our number 1 guy, can't get over it. But the fact that Shohei Ohtani goes from not being on this list at all a year ago, not even being really a thought, just kind of an entertaining sort of a curiosity, to being, without question, the face of baseball entering the 2022 season is a remarkable achievement. And it takes a remarkable, once-in-a-lifetime, once-in-a-generation, beyond that, once-in-a-century type of player like Shohei Ohtani to do it. Shohei has done wonders for the game of baseball and has just skyrocketed in the hobby like we have not seen. Yes, there were a lot of people invested in him in 2018, but I think even if you were investing in him in his rookie year at those high prices, you're still feeling pretty good about that return on investment for Shohei Ohtani. I got to imagine. Shohei is such a phenomenal talent. I guess my only concern about Shohei is this. If he has a year that is not as good as last year, and just statistically speaking, it's not going to be as good as last year, knock on wood, we'll see. Maybe he gets better, which would be real scary. But if he doesn't have as good a year last year, let's say he hits 25 home runs, and let's say he has an ERA of 3.9, that's going to tank his value a little bit, even though that's still the second best season a professional baseball player has ever had. It's still going to make his value go down a little bit in the hobby. The good thing is this. I think his floor is still really high, and probably higher than almost anybody on this list other than our number 1 guy, just because of what he represents. A moment in time and a persona and a type of player that was a truly historic moment in the game of baseball and in baseball card collecting, that his floor will never, ever go down. I point to Bo Jackson as a guy that I think a lot of people who are sports memorabilia collectors and card collectors still absolutely adore. And maybe his stuff doesn't go for as much as Shohei, obviously, but I also think that his floor is pretty much constant. Like, everybody is always going to be excited to pull like a Bo Jackson rookie card or a Bo Jackson autograph because of what he was, of what he represented as that two-way, two-sport player. Shohei, I think, occupies that same space with a healthy Mike Trout, with Anthony Rendon healthy, with a better pitching staff. I think there's a lot of growth still potentially for Shohei, but just beware. I think things will dip a little bit just because that's just the way things go. But overall, if you got in on Shohei at a lower price before the 2021 season, or maybe even during 2020, 2019, where things had probably dipped even lower, you should feel really, really good about the future. It's going to be showtime again. Can't wait to see it. Can't wait to see what he can do with a fully healthy Angels lineup and a better Angels pitching staff. And at number 1, you've probably already guessed it, it's Mike Trout. Still our hobby champion. Look, Mike Trout out for last year. Is this the beginning of the downward turn for Mike Trout? That might be what you're saying to yourself. Is it finally happening? Did we just escape Mike Trout's peak years and is it over? Did I appreciate it enough? Well, maybe it is. But I still think Mike Trout's got something to show us, especially after last year, especially after 2020. He basically lost 2 seasons of elite Mike Trout play. You think he's going to come out and feel like, well, nope, that's it. I had a good run. That's it for me. I'm Mike Trout and signing off. No, he's going to have a great year. He's got too much pride. I think he's got so much to prove this year. Everybody's talking about Shohei Ohtani as the face of the Angels, as the face of baseball. Mike Trout's right there. Hello. He's saying, I could do this too. I don't think there's jealousy or anything, but doing it in tandem with Shohei Ohtani, I think his value is set. Like, you either have a Trout card or you don't at this point. It's probably not going to be something you're investing in anytime soon. But for his autos and future products and stuff like that, I think there's still a lot to love about Mike Trout going forward. I still think he's got so much to prove. Also, his floor didn't go that low. He didn't take that big of a dip after the injury. And I think on the field, this guy is still capable of playing at an MVP caliber level. And to do that with Shohei Ohtani for the first time would just do wonders, not only for the game of baseball, but for the hobby in general. The Angels will be the hobby favorite team. I think if you are a baseball card collector, or if you're in the baseball card business, really, if you're Topps or if you're us or any breakers or anything like that, you should be rooting for the Angels to finally make the playoffs because of what it means for collectors, not just Trout and Ohtani, but Jo Adell as well. Brandon Marsh is a rookie this year. I still think Trout has something to prove. I think he's got something left in the tank. I think there's a bit of a chip on his shoulder going into the season to prove that, yes, he is still the best player in baseball. He is still the blue chip investment to make if you're looking for that long-term investment, or if you've got a Trout card, you should still feel very, very confident that he will hold value for the rest of his career. Mike Trout, until otherwise noted, still the king of baseball cards. There you go, our top 10 in the hobby. A couple of halos at the top of the list. Are you surprised? No, you're probably not. Can they actually put it together on the field this season? Well, that's another story for another time. Let us know who you think belongs in the hobby top 10 for the Major League Baseball season in 2022. Let us know in the comments below. Did we miss anybody? Did we rank anybody too high or too low? Who are your sleeper picks for 2022? Let us know in the comments below. And of course, make sure to like and subscribe to Mojobreak Media for more baseball card content, sports card content all throughout the season.